Welcome to the Sambodhi Learning and Development channel of Trikai Transformation. Here you will find lot of inputs on business management systems, business excellence practices, innovation, strategy, problem solving, healthcare, fitness, fine art and culture with lot more fun. Conducting a company risk assessment can allow an organization to obtain a holistic view of the risk it faces, allowing management to identify these risks and capitalize on opportunities. Risk assessment is an important and sophisticated process of risk identification, risk analysis and risk evaluation so that it can mitigate and reduce risk to an acceptable level. The heart of the matter is effective risk assessment is increasingly important to the success of any business. In fact, it is one of the main parts of a business continuity management system. Friends, remember Murphy's law. Whatever can go wrong will go wrong. Only thing matters is how well you are prepared. Thanks to all viewers and subscribers for your valuable comments and likes to previous videos. Your love and response inspires us to create more and more useful contents for you. Just to recap from previous videos, identifying risks and opportunities is a continual process which plays an integral part of business decision making and day-to-day operations. Unfortunately, many organizations and individuals fail to perform quality risk assessment due to lack of awareness and systems in place. Hence, design of risk management framework is essential part of the risk management process. We wish every organization and individual willing to develop the culture of risk-based thinking will watch this series of videos in full. Yes, these are technical sessions and probably may be a bit difficult to understand if you don't know fundamentals and certain vocabularies. In this case, you may please post comment for clarifications if any. We will also drill down these concepts through a practical approach, so please hit the bell icon and stay tuned with us. Typical risk assessment steps are identifying the risk and the reason for its occurrence, identifying the consequence of the risk occurs, identifying the probability of the risk occurrence once more, identifying the factors that reduce the consequences or probability of the risk. Risk assessment is a part of the core element of risk management defined in ISO 31000, which are communication and consultation, establishing the context, risk assessment, which includes risk identification, risk analysis, risk evaluation, risk treatment and monitoring and review. We will explain you how risk management process is implemented in subsequent videos. There are several risk assessment techniques like brainstorming, structured or semi-structured interviews, Delphi method, checklist, preliminary hazard analysis, hazard and operability study, hazard analysis and critical control points, toxicity assessment, structured what if analysis, scenario analysis, business impact analysis, root cause analysis, failure mode and effect analysis, fault tree analysis, event tree analysis, cause and sequence analysis, cause and effect analysis, layer protection analysis, decision tree, human reliability analysis, bow tie analysis, reliability centered maintenance, sneak circuit analysis, Markov analysis, Monte Carlo analysis, Monte Carlo simulation, Bayesian statistics and Bayes nets, FN curve, risk index, consequence or probability matrix, cost benefit analysis and multi-criteria decision analysis and many more. Risk can be assessed at an organizational level, at a departmental level for projects, individual activities or specific risks. Different tools and techniques may be appropriate in different contexts. We will explain you these techniques in upcoming videos. Risk assessment is that part of risk management which provides a structured process that defines how objectives may be affected and analyzes the risk in terms of consequence and their probabilities before deciding on whether further treatment is required. Risk assessment attempts to answer the following fundamental questions. First one is what can happen and why by risk identification. What are the consequences? What is the probability of their future occurrence? Are there any factors that mitigate the consequences of the risk or that reduce the probability of the risk? Is the level of risk tolerable or acceptable, and does it require further treatment? The purpose of risk assessment is to provide evidence-based information and analysis to make informed decisions how to treat particular risk and how to select between options. Risk assessment provides an understanding of the risk, their causes, consequences, and their probabilities. This provides input to decision about whether an activity should be undertaken, how to maximize opportunities, whether risk needs to be treated, choosing between options with different risk, prioritizing risk treatment options, the most appropriate selection of risk treatment strategies that will bring adverse risk to a tolerable level. Now let us see what is risk identification. Risk identification is the process of finding, recognizing and recording risk. The purpose of risk identification is to identify that might happen or what situations might exist that might affect the achievement of the objectives of the system or organization. Once a risk is identified, the organization should identify any existing controls such as design features, people, processes and systems. The risk identification process includes identifying the causes and sources of the risk. Various supporting techniques can be used to improve accuracy and competency in risk identification, including brainstorming and Delphi methodology. What are the sources of this risk? When we talk about process, there exists supplier, then input, process operations, output and the customer. And there is an interaction between man, machine, method, material and environment. If you look at every interactions, there exists some risk in processes. Take one example of purchasing. In this trend you can see that the rate of supplier rejects has resulted in 280 hours of the shutdown in 2019 and the trend is not improving in 2020. And what opportunity you see here, if the shipping damage issues could be solved, we could eliminate 20% of the non-conformances and 20% of the hours of the interruptions. Now let us see the second step, that is risk analysis. General risk analysis is about developing an understanding of the risk. It provides an input to risk assessment and to decision about whether risk needs to be treated and about the most appropriate treatment strategies and methods. Risk analysis consists of determining the consequences and their probabilities for identifying risk events, taking into account the presence or not, and the effectiveness of any existing controls. The consequences and their probabilities are then combined to determine a level of risk. Here is likelihood scale. It provides threshold in terms of probability and also qualifying statements. While doing estimation of consequences, we need to consider all of these. Risk analysis involves consideration of the causes and sources of risk, their consequences and the probability that those consequences can occur. Factors that affect consequences and probability should be identified. An event can have multiple consequences and can affect multiple objectives. Existing risk controls and their effectiveness should be taken into account. Third and the last step of risk assessment is risk evaluation. The purpose of risk evaluation is to assist in making decision based on the outcomes of the risk analysis about which risk need treatment and the priority for treatment implementation. Risk evaluation involves comparing the level of risk found during the analysis process with risk criteria established when the context was considered. Based on this comparison, the need of treatment can be considered. So what is likelihood and consequences is? Likelihood is how likely is the risk event to happen, and consequences is what will happen when risk happens. If you look at this scale, it varies from 1 to 5, from rare, unlikely, possible, likely and expected. And when we are considering the consequences assessment, we are considering the factors like financial impact, impact on business objectives, reputation, safety, operational downtime, time of senior management, and regulatory compliances, and so on. Here also you can see that the scale ranges between 1 to 5. Cumulative effect of risk likelihood and consequences is the risk impact. It is the multiplication of both. Generally, different scales are used for grading likelihood and consequences by different organizations. Now plot likelihood on x-axis and consequences on y-axis. Divide the grid in 4 zones. Green is the most lenient zone, yellow is the next, amber is further next, and red or critical zone is the worst level of exposure. Decisions should be made in accordance with legal, regulatory, and other requirements. In some circumstances, the risk evaluation can lead to a decision to understand further analysis. The risk evaluation can also lead to a decision not to treat the risk in any way other than maintaining risk controls. This decision will be influenced by the organization's risk attitude and the risk criteria that have been established. The level of risk will depend on the adequacy and effectiveness of existing controls. This we can decide to address basic questions such as what are the existing control of particular risk? Are those controls capable of adequately treating the risk so that it is controlled to a level that is tolerable? In practice, are the controls operating in the manner intended and can they be demonstrated to effectively when required? Similarly, consequences analysis determines the nature and type of impact which could occur assuming that a particular event, situation or a circumstance has occurred. An event may have a range of impacts of different magnitudes and affect a range of different objectives and different stakeholders. While likelihood analysis and probability estimation, 3 general approaches are commonly employed to estimate probability. They may be used individually or jointly. First one is the use of relevant historical data to identify events or situations which have occurred in the past and hence able to extrapolate the probability of their occurrence in the future. Second one is probability forecast using predictive techniques such as fault tree analysis and event tree analysis. Third one is expert opinion can be used in a systematic and structured process to estimate probability. The risk assessment process should be documented together with the results of the assessment. Risk should be expressed in understandable terms and the units in which the level of risk is expressed should be clear. The extent of the report will depend on the objectives and scope of the assessment. Except for very simple assessment, the documentation can include objectives and scope, description of relevant parts of the system and their functions, a summary of the external and internal context of the organization and how it relates to situation, systems or circumstances being assessed. Risk criteria applied and their justification, limitations, assumption and justification of hypothesis, assessment methodology, risk assessment results, data, assumption and their sources of validation, risk analysis results and their evaluation, sensitivity and uncertainty analysis, critical assumptions and other factors which need to be monitored, discussion of results, conclusion and recommendations. In the next video, we will explain you what is 5 steps of risk management process and its strategic and tactical components. Simultaneously, we are also starting a Lean Six Sigma Masterclass. If you are really interested, then please do subscribe our channel and hit the bell icon to stay updated. Albert Einstein said, "The problem that exists in the world cannot be solved by the level of thinking that created them." Please do subscribe our channel. Your single like will motivate us to keep producing useful content for you. We request you to post your comments, and if you find this content useful, then share within your groups. Stay safe, stay tuned. Thank you.